My name is Brian Johnson. I am 41 years old, and I live in New York with my wonderful wife, Emily, and our 2 children, Michael and Jane. Even today, after 15 years, I am still an employee as a computer engineer at a renowned software company. I feel good. It's a stimulating and dynamic environment where I feel appreciated and respected for my skills and dedication. Most of my colleagues are friendly and competent people with whom I have built friendships and collaborations over the years. Fortunately, with my job, I earn well, which has allowed me to give my wife Emily the opportunity to focus completely on caring for our adorable children. It's wonderful to know that our children are always in good hands. It gives me great peace of mind while I'm at work. For some time, we had the desire to organize a long trip with our children. This time we felt that the moment had come to unwind and enjoy some relaxation. Emily eagerly wanted to spend time soaking up the sun, while I felt the need to get away from the stress of work and recharge. It was July 9th when we finally started packing for our long road trip. After a few hours, we had everything packed in the car trunk and made sure we didn't forget anything important. We smiled at each other, thinking about the adventures that awaited us as we headed to the car ready to start our incredible travel experience. We preferred not to have a specific destination, but to let the road and destiny guide us. The idea was to plan our itinerary gradually during the trip, leaving room for instinct and adventure. It was a way to fully embrace the spirit of travel and be surprised by the opportunities that would arise along the way. At that point, we started the car engine and set off. The city lights came on as we left New York behind and headed west along the highway. The first 100 miles seemed to fly by under the car wheels, but as the night approached and fatigue began to set in, we decided to make a stop to rest. We stopped at a hotel along the way, and as soon as we arrived, we headed to the reception to check in. The receptionist greeted us with a warm smile and immediately assigned us a room on the 13th floor. Once we were given the keys, we took the elevator up to our floor, curious to discover our refuge for the night. As soon as we entered the room, we noticed that it was spacious and well furnished, with a breathtaking view of the city stretching out below us. The bed looked inviting, with fresh and soft sheets promising a comfortable night's sleep. We immediately felt at ease, ready to relax and enjoy our stay. After taking a refreshing shower, we relaxed on the bed and started discussing various destinations to visit and experiences to have during the trip. Shortly after, fatigue took over and we fell asleep, almost without realizing it. The next day, we woke up early, around 6:30 in the morning. After a hearty breakfast at the hotel, we went to the reception to settle the bill and thank the staff for the pleasant stay. Once the bill was paid, we grabbed our things and left the hotel, ready to resume our journey. As we drove along the roads, we admired the breathtaking landscapes stretching around us, full of vibrant colors and picturesque views. Occasionally, some of them particularly caught our attention, so we would pull over to the side of the road to take some beautiful photos. While I was driving, my children sat in the back seats, full of curiosity about everything around us. "Dad, look how big that truck is!" exclaimed Michael excitedly, pointing out the window. "Yes, it's really huge. I wonder what it's carrying," I replied with a smile. Jane, sitting behind her mother Emily, began recounting some stories she had heard at school. "Mom, did you know that the other day the teacher told us a story about a dragon that lived in a cave?" "Oh, how interesting. And how was the story? Did you like it?" asked Emily, turning her gaze to our daughter Jane, who nodded with a smile. At some point during the journey, I asked Emily and the children if they felt like stopping for lunch in the next town we would come across. I had heard there was an excellent restaurant with a spectacular view. "That sounds like a fantastic idea. The kids can play for a bit and we can relax," replied Emily with a smile. The children agreed as well, and so Amidst the laughter of the children and the conversations between Emily and me, the journey continued, full of special moments and shared family joy. Shortly after, we arrived at the restaurant. We got out of the car and headed towards the entrance, where we could smell the enticing aroma of freshly prepared food. One of the waiters noticed us and promptly assigned us a table. "This is just what we needed after a few hours of travel," exclaimed Emily, satisfied, as she savored the food. Time flew by, and before we knew it, it was around 6 p.m. We had spent 4 hours sitting there, chatting while the children played in the restaurant's lawn with other kids. At that point, we were preparing to leave. We warmly bid farewell to the restaurant staff and set off on our journey again, unaware of what awaited us just ahead. As we drove along a deserted road through the countryside, suddenly I began to hear a strange noise coming from the front of the vehicle. "Emily, do you hear this noise too?" I asked, looking up from the steering wheel with a worried expression. "Yes, it's really strange. Do you think it's coming from the engine?" replied Emily, looking out the window with concerned eyes. The children sitting behind us started asking what was happening. "Dad, why is the car making this noise?" asked Jane, looking at me with curious eyes. "It's okay, sweetheart, don't worry," I replied, trying to reassure her. In reality, I was the first one to be worried and not knowing what that noise was. With a sigh of uncertainty, I slowed down and pulled over to the side of the road, the scorching asphalt emanating unbearable heat. We got out of the car and I approached the hood while Emily and the kids gathered around me with questioning looks. I pulled the lever to open the hood and found myself facing the complex maze of mechanical components that made up the engine. I started trying to identify the source of the noise, but every gear, belt, and pipe seemed to speak a dark and incomprehensible language. But then, I noticed a detail out of place. A loose belt hitting against a metal part of the engine. That was the cause of the annoying noise. A glimmer of hope lit up inside me as I realized there might be a solution to our problem. "Emily, I found the problem," I said excitedly. "It's just a loose belt. Hopefully we can reach the next gas station before it completely gives out." We got back in the car and headed towards the next gas station, which was about 12 miles away. Luckily, after about half an hour, we managed to reach it. My sweaty hands slipped from the steering wheel due to the built-up tension. As soon as we arrived, we realized it was a run-down place, almost forgotten by time. The faded and rusted sign barely swayed in the light breeze of the evening. In the parking lot, several trucks were parked side by side. Presumably, the drivers were sleeping inside. At the end of the parking lot, there was a small motel with a peeling facade and dirty windows. It seemed like the right place for tired and lonely travelers looking for temporary shelter. In short, it was the kind of place I wouldn't have stayed even for a night. Immediately after getting out of the car, telling my wife and kids to wait for me inside, I headed to the gas station's bar to ask for information about any nearby mechanical workshops. The barkeeper, a gruff man with a stern expression, told me there was an excellent mechanic about 20 miles north. I thanked him for the information and left the bar, returning to the car. All we could do now was wait until the next day to fix the car and continue our journey. Unfortunately, I had to eat my words about the motel. That night, it was the only solution we had. We got out of the car, grabbed our suitcases, and headed towards the motel to spend the night. As soon as we crossed the threshold of the motel, we were greeted by an oppressive atmosphere, thick with unpleasant smells. A nauseating mix of alcohol, sweat, and cigarette smoke permeated the air, enveloping us in a suffocating grip. The environment around us seemed to have lost all traces of care or maintenance, with cracked and stained walls and the worn-out floor beneath our feet. The reception was a dark and desolate corner. illuminated only by the faint light of a flickering chandelier. Behind the counter stood a disheveled-looking man with a dull gaze that seemed to gaze into infinity. Without uttering a word, the man handed us a worn and rusty key, indicating the direction of the room. "Room number 1, he muttered hoarsely. "The room of the sleepless." His tone only added to the discomfort I already felt. Despite the growing unease, we had no alternative. With a knot of tension in my stomach, I took the key and we headed towards our accommodation for the night. The Insomniac's room, a name that didn't give much hope. It seemed to describe something dark that I sincerely hoped not to discover.